been there a few times, and she was studying at Mount Holyoke in Western Massachusetts, and she was involved with some of the campus groups, so she went to the event, and she live streamed it on Periscope at that time. And I didn't even know her. I had heard about her. I had seen her on Twitter. And when the debate finished, she came up to me and she said, "Oh my gosh, I just streamed that. You had 30,000 people watching." She goes, "Ben Shapiro watched it. Milo Yiannopoulos watched it." She said, "And you've got a bunch of different job offers." And we do a little post-game interview. She's asking me questions. And the last question she asked me, which is like the big setup for my whole life, she said, "I just got back from Israel." She said, "Would you ever take a trip to Israel? Because I think you'd love it," and so on. And, I sort of knew what was happening with Israel, but not 100%. And I said, "Yeah." I said, "It sounds interesting, but I think I have everything I need right here in America." And she goes, "Oh, okay." She wraps up the interview and she gives me her card. We exchange information. I get involved with her. She was involved with RSBN. And if you know, that's Right Side Broadcasting Network. They did all the Trump rallies during the election. And when the election ended, they said they were going to start up a bunch of original programming. They had Mike Cernovich, Bill Mitchell, a bunch of these guys that were on Twitter. And she had a show. It's called Raised Right. And so she contacted Joe Seals, who's at RSBN, and she said, I saw this guy give the speech. He's really great. He debated this guy on campus. We should give this guy a show. And so I got in touch with them. We got to talking. This was around the end of 2016, beginning of 2017. They said, what do you want to call your show? I said, well, let's call it the Nicholas J. Fuentes Show. They said, that's too long. Nobody knows who you are. We don't want that. I said, okay. They said, you need a different name. I said, all right. So I watched the Trump inauguration, which was January 17, and he said in the speech, a new vision will govern our land. It's going to be only America first. And I said, I like the sound of that. I said, we'll call it America First.
So question, how old are you exactly at this time?
I was 18.
18. Okay, so all of this sort of happened 17, 18 years old, or this all happened very quickly at the age of 18?
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, and it all happened rapidly, and this was a time when I was still even figuring out what I'm about, because I'm a teenager. And I've been extremely political since I was like 12 years old. I read Thomas Sowell, Milton Friedman, all that stuff, all the libertarian, conservative stuff, even a lot of the neocon stuff, honestly. I was kind of all over the place. And I started to get red-pilled. I started to go on 4chan. I started to go on far-right Twitter. I started to get into some of these more interesting ideas. And I wasn't sold yet. That's sort of the thing, is I was sort of in this questioning phase, not sort of innuendo, but questioning, my political ideology. Like, I had these libertarian priors.